Do I understand the mind and body in the same way? When it comes to the body and mind, another point is about how they are known. It's assumed that I know my body and my consciousness. Do I know both in the same way? I can see my body, for example, I look in the mirror. What about my mind? Can the mind be seen? If the mind is in the brain, can you see the mind when you open up and look at the brain? Similarly, when it comes to a body, a physical object, the knowledge of this body is objectively open to everyone. Anyone who wants can examine the body thoroughly with various experimental tools. However, the same is not true for the mind. A person's own mind experience is unique to them, not accessible to others. In this respect, while we have direct, unmediated access to our own mental states, I can access the mental states of another person indirectly and through mediation. Therefore, I can only infer the mental state of another person to the extent that they describe it or it is reflected in their behavior. So, what about the mental states that are thought to be in the mind? What is their structure? What is their content? Another person cannot be aware of my mental states and I cannot be aware of theirs. So how do I know my own mental states? What are the issues related to consciousness? The nature of consciousness constitutes another topic of philosophy of mind. What is consciousness? What distinguishes a conscious being from an unconscious one? What is the relationship between consciousness, emotions, intentions, and the body? How can the relationship between consciousness and intelligence be established? Although many philosophers think that consciousness is a realm of existence beyond the physical, contemporary neuroscience, artificial intelligence and cognitive psychology studies seem to be bringing consciousness closer to the physical. According to these scientists, consciousness is a topic that can be studied scientifically. Therefore, from their perspective, consciousness is not something that exists beyond brain physiology. What are the issues related to artificial intelligence? Another problem is directed towards the mind-thought relationship. Is thought merely a mental product? In other words, can thought processes be reduced to purely mental processes? If so, can it be said that robots will be able to think one day? Are there insurmountable obstacles in this matter? If not, in an age where robots have managed to think like humans, how will we distinguish between robots and humans? What is the distinction between psychology, neurology, and philosophy of mind? When it comes to mind and consciousness, it is seen that these two concepts are also within the scope of psychology. However, even though there is a common interest in some respects, the philosophy of mind differs from psychology in many ways. Firstly, as Wittgenstein said in the Tractatus, philosophy is not one of the natural sciences. Secondly, psychology puts forward claims using experimental methods. In the philosophy of mind, although scientific developments must be taken into consideration, conceptual analyses are made. The aim is to make concepts related to the mind clear and understandable. Points that scientific solutions cannot reach are tried to be identified and clarified. Another point of distinction is as follows. Psychology can explain, for example, the neuroscientific processes that occur when listening to beloved music. However, the philosophy of mind questions the meaning this experience holds for the listener, the accessibility of this meaning by other minds, and whether the mental processes thought to correspond to the music in question are truly equivalent to that music, and reasons about these matters. In other words, new facts are not discovered through the philosophy of mind, but new information about facts can be revealed. What is the subject of the mind as a philosophical activity? Another point to be mentioned regarding the philosophy of mind is its connection with philosophical activity in general. One of the most exciting aspects of philosophy is that it is an endless activity. Its endlessness is related to the fact that a philosophical problem does not easily have a universally accepted solution. From this perspective, every philosophical problem corresponds to a multiplicity of answers and disagreements. Perhaps, among philosophical problems, the mind-body duality carries such a multiplicity and divergence of views the most. Therefore, The philosophy of mind is a pure philosophical discipline. To facilitate the understanding of the discussions in the philosophy of mind, specifically the views regarding the nature of the mind, let's briefly look at the mind within its historical development. For over 2,000 years, people have been trying to understand what the mind is. Despite all the scientific advancements, there are still many unknowns about the mind. Philosophers in ancient philosophy, who were far from today's scientific knowledge, undoubtedly tried to explain the mind. For example, Plato, especially in the Phaedo dialogue where he recounts Socrates' last moments, conceives of the soul as a structure that continues to exist after the body dies. Of course, in those times it was not known that the brain was the organ that is the source of thought and perception. In the same period, Aristotle considered the brain to be a kind of heater that regulates the temperature of the blood. Thinking, emotions, and self-awareness were provided by the heart. Returning to Plato, in the same dialogue, he defines humans as partly body and partly soul. This understanding, which would develop as dualism, defines the soul, mind, and body as two separate things. The term the Greeks used for soul, psyche, is the word at the beginning of the terms psychology and psychiatry. The soul is invisible and uses the body as a tool. The most important duty of the soul is to investigate the ideals, which are pure forms. Instead, a soul that pursues lower bodily pleasures comes to a world of a lower level than human in its next embodiment. For Aristotle, the soul is explained by a kind of functionality. The soul is the body's functioning in a certain way. We cannot separate the soul and the body. Thinking, which is the activity of the soul, is also the activity of the body. There has not been a significant change regarding the soul until the modern era. The frameworks drawn by Plato and Aristotle give rise to all other views. Descartes, as we will see in detail below, is one of the key figures in the philosophy of mind. He becomes the first philosopher to draw the mind into detailed discussions by definitively distinguishing between the soul and the body.